This is Front and Center with your host, Jacquie Jordan.
Entertainment and pop culture expert Jacquie Jordan is with us.
We are the show where we talk with the change agents, the storytellers, and the activators, making impact from behind the scenes. Welcome to Front and Center with Jacquie Jordan. I am Jacquie Jordan, and I'm so grateful to have you here. We are the show where the change agents, storytellers, and activators from behind the scenes are making impact. Joining us now, Front and Center. And today we've got a special guest who I love, adore, and respect. Leslie Marcus is a producer who's been on The Doctors for the past 8 years as an investigative reporter and producer. And before her foray at The Doctors, she was worked in the news, both at Fox 5 San Diego and other news sources. So she's been a really great resource. Welcome, Leslie. So thank you so much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
So you've had a really longevity in news. There's a lot of narratives why do some narratives stick and why do some narratives don't stick?
It's really the human interest angle. How does it pertain to people that are watching, your viewers? And also, how does it make an impact on what society is currently going through? So what's the current state of events? Does it apply to those sort of events? And is it going to strike a chord with viewers?
One of the things that have changed a lot in my time in media is of the technology, of course, and social media. So social media sometimes drives the pulse or the pulse of things. Mm-hmm. Is that helpful, or do in the media, are we just reacting now to that pulse, or are we actually participating in creating that pulse?
It's interesting. I find that the true story really is in the comment section on posts in social media. Yes. You have to read them because then you get a sense of what people are thinking and if they even care about the topic and what side they're on, right? You can't do news without social media today. And I understand what you're saying about, are we just reacting? I know there's some news stations or some programs that just are like, okay, we have to do social media, so we're going to just post it on social media. But that doesn't work because the interactivity, you need that right now. You need to be engaged with your viewers. You need to put polls up. You need to do different things. You can't just repost something that's on TV these days. People see right through that. It doesn't resonate with them.
What are some of your favorite stories that you've brought to the forefront that have been popular?
Gosh, so many stories. Let's see, some recent ones. Let's talk about Delta 8. Delta 8, it's a byproduct of CBD. People are, synthesizing it, amateur chemists in a laboratory. And we saw the CBD boom, but there's all this surplus. So it's not the liquid gold that it used to be. And there's a huge market for this Delta 8 now because it's psychoactive and CBD isn't, but there's no regulation. So I brought that to the forefront.
You did a deep dive. That was investigative. Yeah, that was an guest. I mean, that was I love it because I don't think we do enough deep dive TV anymore personally, because I think we just kind of do surface, but that was a deep dive you did with your investigative report on that.
Thank you. The Doctors was a great platform to do deep dives because it's not news. In news, you're kind of limited sometimes because if you think about the length of your program and you have so much content to cover. So a news package or a story is usually roughly 2 minutes and 30 seconds. But at The Doctors, I was able to do deep dives. So, one of the other stories I did recently was the benzene contamination in all types of personal care products. And benzene isn't an ingredient that you can look on the label. It's actually a chemical byproduct that there's some talk that it's coming from the aerosol sprays. So it's just something when you're looking at aerosol sprays, especially for your kids, sunscreen, stuff like that, dry shampoos, it's probably a good idea to avoid the aerosol right now until this problem is resolved. Because
that's really good. Kind of reminds me of glyphosate. Glyphosate is one of the things that also you can't actually see the ingredient of it. So you have to know the byproduct of ingredients in order to avoid it as well, like in the food supply.
Yeah, you would think the FDA has more control than they actually do, or more oversight, and that they're right there on our side protecting us, but that's simply not the case. I'm not saying they're the enemy, but it seems like a lot of my investigations, you find out that they might be, not in bed per se, but in cahoots with the companies themselves and not really there for the consumer. And so you have to be your own advocate. And a lot of my stories, that's a lot of the takeaway. You need to be your own advocate, do your own research, find valuable sources online, not fake news. I know there's a lot of that. And definitely on social media, there's the surplus of fake news.
Yes, buyer beware.
Exactly. Find reputable sources.
So, because you did great research at the doctors. I mean, you do great research in all you do. And I would see those packets. They're like, 70 pages, like 170 pages that would be turned around in a week. Like people have no idea the intensity and depth of the work.
You're a medical show.
Where did you find how did you fact check your material? What were some of your best platforms or resources that you used?
There's a learning curve to proper research. So, I had a team of people, and it's really about guiding them, mentoring them to find the right research. So usually the production assistant does the research, but they can't just go blindly
Google.
And oh yeah, you really need some critical skills to be able to differentiate between what's fake news and what isn't. So, when you look at a medical study doesn't make something solid gold or true. You have to look at what are the special interests of that study. Not all of them have special interests, but some PR stunts, they'll put a study out there that was done in-house and it looks legitimate. And a lot of news stations will report on it. And that's, I believe, a huge mistake, but there's special interests involved. Somebody did that study for that company specifically. There's no real science to that study. It's just made to look like there is, because when you hear, oh, a medical study said this, a new study said that, a lot of dating sites do that. They'll do, oh, a new study says this many people want to date this way and this way. And then you look at who created the study and it's Ashley Madison. I'm not going to say a specific name, or it's, Tinder.
Right.
You name it.
Right. Like follow the money.
You have to really look at where your sourcing is. Then you have to look at, okay, who are their sources? Do they have clean records? Are they embroiled in lawsuits? It's never ending. You don't want to get into bed with a particular individual that did a study that has a long track record of putting out fake news or being too controversial, or, tying themselves with topics that aren't mainstream and that people really don't take a liking to.
And you end up endorsing just by giving it attention.
Exactly. And so that's why the research is so important, because the last thing the doctors want to do, or any show wants to do, is endorse somebody who's not legitimate.
Right. Yeah. I can relate to that from the publishing end of our company, because in a published book, you have to have a whole entire team has to go through it. You have to have, editors, copy editors, story editors, legal people. So, a published book is an endorsed book, whereas a self-published book doesn't necessarily go through the same vetting. So it's very hard to, support sometimes a self-published book. So I'm just kind of relating that from, what we experience on that side. Were you sent 1,000 products? How did you discern which? I just could imagine between beauty and lifestyle and health and medical, what you tried out. How did you pick? How did you choose?
Well, it's interesting. We couldn't really do a lot of branded segments on the show. In local news, you can, absolutely. But in CBS was very strict. It's like, is that scream in integration when you have a specific product that you're pitching? And so, we had word of the days where we would do giveaways and stuff like that. And so those were product based. And so we would always try out different products, or if we were putting something to the test, that was a common segment that we did on the doctors, where whether it be a beauty product or a gadget or medical gadget, you name it. I remember the whole office was trying out this booty sprout claimed to help you exercise your butt. And there are all these devices for your butt that came out. I tried gluten sensors. I tried different makeup, eyelashes, right when magnetic lashes came out, we gave those a try. There are so many different things that we tried out or we put to the test to see if they actually held up to their marketing claims.
And then you were there for 8 years. So
8 years.
Yeah. So did you get? Yeah, it was amazing.
It was amazing.
But that's a lot. But that means you've seen everything. You know what I'm saying? It's really hard to impress you. I mean, you're always enthusiastic, but genuinely, how hard is it to impress you with something new because you've kind of seen it all?
That's where it really came in, if you're a good pitcher, right? Because we covered everything. I remember before I got the job on the doctors, I was creating them shows to show them that I would be a good, viable producer there. And I had 2 laptops open. I would think a topic was great. And then I had another laptop open where I'd type in the topic and the doctor's TV, and they had already done it.
Done it.
So it was challenging to find content every single week, and especially to fill an hour show. And, I wasn't the only producer there. So there's other producers there, and we all would go in and pitch our topics for that week. And I remember there'd be some, I dibs that, we had a dib system. I dibs that first. So really what I, decided is I want to create original content. So, the news cycle is interesting. A story will get picked up by a bunch of different publications, and that really works for news because they're live, but our shows would air 3 or 4 weeks later, depending on the air calendar. And so by that time, it could possibly be old news and people are already past it. That news cycle is really interesting. So I would try to investigate new types of content or new things we haven't covered yet and find different angles for those.
Ever since I've known you, you've always been into health and fitness. So this has been like the perfect, you'd be like, oh yeah, I just ran 5 miles. I'm intermittent fasting.
Don't do that anymore, but you bring up a good point.
but you do. So it was a really good fit for you. What do people need to know, especially coming out of the last couple of years, about their own health? I know you're not a doctor, but just from someone who embodies a healthy lifestyle, what do people need to consider going forward?
I mean, managing weight is a difficult task. I've been through it my whole life. I don't think there's one magic formula for it. There's always a new fad diet. The only thing that I've ever found that worked for me, quite honestly, and my good friend is Jorge Cruz, and he'd have a new diet book every quarter, that he would do new research for science, and we'd go on a fruit diet, or we'd go on a low carb diet, or we go on a no fat diet, a fat filled diet instead of carbs. It was always something, but then he got me involved with intermittent fasting, and intermittent fasting kind of changed everything for me, and everybody started doing it and trying it at least. But it's not as crazy as it sounds. It's really about trying to eat in an 8-hour window. And if you think about that,
you should really just eat within an 8-hour window, because if
it's
not,
hard.
If not, you're late night snacking, you're eating after 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. I mean,
or drinking, because that counts. And a lot of people don't take that into account, but it absolutely counts. So if you have a glass of wine while you're watching a movie, you need to push back your, the start time of your meals a little later so you can enjoy that. I've taken I take breaks. I don't do it as religiously as I used to, but I do know that it works. And I think it's just simple math, because you're eliminating calories in a whole meal, and then also the health benefits. So it's not just about losing weight, but if you really look at the science, and I've done deep dives on the science about how when you put your body in a calorie deficit, how much that benefits your other organs, your brain, your hormones, other things like that I don't want to get too scientific, but closing off pathways in your brain that cause inflammation, and we know that inflammation is a killer. So if you do a deep dive in intermittent fasting, it doesn't have to be crazy. I've tried the 1 meal a day. It's not for me, but you will lose a ton of weight. But I don't like that. I don't feel that great. Some people swear by it, or the 5-2. I mean, it's really,
I like food too much to go down to 1 meal a day.
And that's the beauty of it, right? You don't have to eliminate certain groups. If nobody wants to eliminate, I don't ever want to eliminate carbs from my life. So, the beauty of intermittent fasting is you don't have to do that. You just need to eat in a window.
Well, what I hear from you, and it really goes to the question of what do people need to know coming out of the last couple of years regarding health? What I hear from you is that you have tried what works best for you. It's all about what works best for you at that moment, at that given time. It's not like a prescription for life. It's like what works for you now, what may not have worked for you 10 years ago. I know that's really true for myself. So you see, that's what I mean. You embody that kind of healthy lifestyle for other people, especially coming out of the past couple of years where everybody was so really concerned about health, but really finding out what works best for you. Where can we find out more about you on your Instagram?
Sure. It's L Marcus. You can find me on there. My website is Leslie Marcus Media.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on Front and Center.
It was great chatting with you.
And for more about Front and Center, please subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or any other place that you subscribe to your favorite podcast. I'm Jacquie Jordan. See you next time.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Front and Center with Jacquie Jordan podcast. Please subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Instagram at TVGuestpert. We'd love to hear from you.